Chapter 1. The autumn wind howled across the rolling hills of Dorset, carrying with it a chill that seemed to seep into the very stones of Ashborne Manor. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed despite the journey, stepped from the chauffeured car and adjusted his Homburg hat. His moustache, waxed to perfection, twitched slightly as he surveyed the grand edifice before him. The manor's ivy-clad facade loomed under a sky heavy with clouds, its tall windows reflecting nothing but the gloom. Poirot's polished shoes crunched on the gravel drive as he approached the oak doors, his mind already turning over the peculiar summons that had brought him here. A week earlier, a letter had arrived at his London flat, penned in an elegant hand. Lady Eleanor Ashbourne, sole heiress to the Ashbourne fortune, requested his presence at her ancestral home. "Monsieur Poirot," she wrote, "I fear a shadow hangs over me. I cannot trust those around me, yet I know not who to suspect. Your little grey cells, so famed, are my only hope." The urgency of her words, coupled with the vagueness of her fears, intrigued Poirot. He had accepted at once, sensing a puzzle worthy of his intellect. Now, as he stood before the manor, a prickle of unease stirred within him. The air was too still, the silence too profound. He rapped the brass knocker, its echoes swallowed by the vastness of the house. Moments passed before the door creaked open, revealing a butler whose pallor matched the grey stone behind him. "Monsieur Poirot?" the man asked, his voice trembling. "I am Hawkins. Please, come in." Poirot stepped into a cavernous hall, its chandelier casting feeble light on marble floors and ancestral portraits. The air smelled of wax and neglect. "Where is Lady Eleanor?" he inquired, his sharp eyes noting Hawkins' fidgeting hands. She is gone, sir," Hawkins stammered. "Vanished last night. I thought you had been told." Poirot Sifts' eyebrows rose, but his composure remained unshaken. "Gone? Precisement, you will explain. Take me to where she was last seen." Hawkins led him through a maze of corridors, past tapestries frayed at the edges, to a study lined with leather-bound books. A fire smouldered in the grate, casting shadows on a mahogany desk. Poirot's gaze swept the room, lingering on an overturned chair, its velvet cushion askew. "This," Hawkins said, "is where I found the room this morning. Her ladyship was here last evening, reading a letter. She seemed agitated." "A letter?" Poirot Sifts' voice was soft, but his eyes gleamed. Hawkins shook his head. "It's gone, sir. I saw her place it in her desk, but when I checked this morning it was missing." Poirot approached the desk, his gloved fingers tracing its polished surface. The drawers were locked, but a faint scratch near the keyhole suggested tampering. He turned to Hawkins. "Who else was in the manor last night?" "Only the household, sir. Miss Clara, the maid, Mr. Gerald Ashbourne, her ladyship Sip's cousin, and Mr. Thorne, the solicitor, who arrived yesterday. Oh, and myself, of course." Poirot nodded, filing away the names. "And their whereabouts this morning?" "Mr. Gerald is in the drawing-room, sir. Miss Clara's cleaning upstairs. Mr. Thorne left early for the village, but he's expected back soon." "Bien. I shall speak with them. But first the manor, show me her ladyship Sip's rooms." Hawkins hesitated, then led Poirot up a grand staircase to a suite overlooking the gardens. Eleanor's bedroom was a study in elegance. Silk drapes, a four-poster bed, a vanity cluttered with crystal vials. Yet, like the study, it felt untouched. The bed was made, the wardrobe full, her fur coat hanging as if awaiting her return. Poirot's eyes narrowed at a single anomaly, a pearl earring on the floor, its twin missing. "She left in haste, perhaps," he murmured, pocketing the earring with a handkerchief. As they descended, a man emerged from the drawing-room, his face flushed with irritation. He was tall, with dishevelled hair, and a tweed suit that had seen better days. "You must be Poirot," he said brusquely. "I'm Gerald Ashbourne. This is all nonsense, you know. Eleanor's probably off on some whim. She's always been dramatic." Poirot smiled thinly. "Monsieur, a woman who fears for her safety does not vanish for drama. You saw her last night. Gerald shrugged, briefly. She was in the study, muttering about some letter. I didn't stay long. And you heard nothing unusual after? Nothing, Gerald said too quickly. His eyes darted to the window, avoiding Poirot's gaze. Before Poirot could press further, a young woman appeared, her apron dusted with flour. Monsieur Poirot, she said timidly. I'm Clara. I found something in the garden this morning. She held out a silk scarf, embroidered with the initials E.A. It was torn at one edge, stained with mud. Poirot took it, his mind racing. Where precisely did you find this? Near the rose arbor, sir, by the path to the woods. Merci, Mademoiselle Clara. You have been most helpful. He turned to Hawkins. I will see this arbor now. The garden was a tangle of overgrown hedges, the rose arbor a skeletal frame under dying blooms. Poirot examined the path, noting fresh footprints in the damp earth, too large for a woman's. The scarf, the footprints, the overturned chair, each was a thread in a tapestry. He would soon unravel. But for now the manor held its secrets close. Back in the hall, Poirot paused before a portrait of a young Eleanor, her eyes bright with promise. Lady Eleanor, he said softly, where have you gone, and who has taken you there? His little grey cells hummed with possibilities, but one thing was certain. This was no mere whim. A shadow did hang over Ashborne Manor, and Poirot would bring it into the light. As dusk settled, a car-sept's engine rumbled outside. Hawkins peered through the window. Easted, Mr. Thorne, sir. Shall I fetch him? Oui, Poirot said, his voice steely, and summoned the others. The investigation, it begins in earnest. The wind howled again, as if mourning the heiress who had vanished into the night. Chapter 2. Whispers of the Past. The morning light struggled through the heavy drapes of Ashborne Manor, casting long shadows across the dining room where Hercule Poirot sat, a cup of café au lait in hand. The table, set for breakfast, was an island of order in a house that felt increasingly disordered. Poirot's sharp eyes flicked from the chipped porcelain teapot to the nervous fidgeting of Hawkins, the butler, who stood by the door. The absence of Lady Eleanor Ashbourne hung over the room like a spectre, and Poirot was determined to coax the manor's secrets into the open. Monsieur Hawkins, Poirot began, his voice smooth but commanding, you have served the Ashbourne family for many years. N'est-ce pas? Tell me of their history. The roots of this mystery, they lie in the past, I think. Hawkins hesitated, his fingers twisting a napkin. I've been here 30 years, sir. The Ashburs were once the pride of Dorset. Sir Reginald, Lady Eleanor Sept's father, built his fortune in diamonds, mines in Africa, you see, but there were troubles. Family disputes, mostly after he passed. Disputes? Poirot Sip's mustache twitched with interest. Of what nature? Over the inheritance, sir. Sir Reginald left everything to Lady Eleanor, his only child. Her cousins, Mr. Gerald among them, were not pleased. There was talk of a contested will, but it never came to much. Poirot nodded, filing the information away. Greed, he knew, was a potent motive. And Lady Eleanor Sip's mother, Lady Margaret. She died when Lady Eleanor was young, a tragedy. Some say it broke Sir Reginald's spirit. Hawkins' voice dropped. There were rumours, sir, about Lady Margaret and a business partner of Sir Reginald's, a man named Victor Ellswood. He vanished after a scandal, something about forged contracts. Interessant, Poirot murmured. He sipped his coffee, his mind turning over the threads of betrayal and loss. And where might I find records of this family history?
The library, sir. Lady Eleanor kept old diaries and letters there. But some are...
Privacy, Monsieur Hawkins, does not exist in a case of disappearance. Lead me there. The library was a cavernous room, its shelves sagging under the weight of dusty tomes. A portrait of Sir Reginald glowered from above the fireplace, his stern features mirrored in Eleanor's likeness from the hall. Poirot's gaze swept the room, noting a roll-top desk in the corner, its surface cluttered with papers. As Hawkins hovered, Poirot opened a drawer and extracted a faded photograph, a young woman, presumably Margaret, beside a man with sharp eyes and a sly smile. The back bore a single word in looping script. "Victor." "This is Ellswood?" Poirot asked, holding up the photograph. Hawkins nodded reluctantly. "I believe so, sir. I never met him." Before Poirot could press further, Clara the maid entered, her apron smudged with soot. "Beg pardon, sir," she said, eyes downcast. "I found something while cleaning the attic. Thought you should see it." She handed him a leather-bound diary, its pages yellowed with age. Poirot opened it, scanning entries in a delicate hand. They were Margaret's, dated 2 decades ago. One passage caught his eye. "Victor promises wealth, but at what cost? Reginald suspects, and I fear his anger. I must protect Eleanor." The entry ended abruptly, as if the writer had been interrupted. Poirot closed the diary, his mind racing. A scandal, a fortune, a missing heiress, each piece fit into a puzzle he was only beginning to understand. "Merci, Mademoiselle Clara," he said. "This is most illuminating. Tell me, was Lady Eleanor curious about her mother Sip's past?" Clara blushed. "She asked questions, sir. Last week she was in here reading old letters. She seemed troubled." Poirot Simpson's eyes narrowed. "And did she speak of a safe, a place where she kept important documents?" Clara hesitated, then nodded. "She mentioned a safe once behind the portrait in the study, but I don't know the combination." "Bien," Poirot said, dismissing her with a nod. He turned to Hawkins. We returned to the study. The study was as they had left it, the overturned chair a silent witness to Eleanor's final moments in the room. Poirot approached the portrait of Sir Reginald, his fingers probing the frame. A faint click rewarded his efforts, and the painting swung forward, revealing a small safe embedded in the wall. Its dial gleamed in the dim light, unyielding and locked. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured. "What secrets do you guard?" He tested the dial, but it refused to budge. The safe's presence confirmed his suspicion. Eleanor had been guarding something valuable, something worth vanishing for, or being made to vanish. As he stepped back, Gerald Ashbourne appeared in the doorway, his face a mask of irritation. "What's this, Poirot? Poking about in family business?" His tone was sharp, but his eyes lingered on the safe, betraying a flicker of unease. "Family business, Monsieur Gerald, becomes my business when a lady disappears," Poirot replied smoothly. "You know of this safe?" Gerald shrugged, too casually. "Eleanor Sett's always been secretive. Probably keeps her jewels in there. Nothing to do with me." Poirot Sip's smile was thin. "We shall see. Tell me, what was your relationship with your cousin?" "We got along well enough," Gerald said, his voice tight. "She was generous when it suited her, but she didn't set trust easily. Always thought someone was after her money." "And were they?" Poirot's question hung in the air, unanswered, as Gerald turned away, muttering about estate matters. Alone again, Poirot studied the safe, his little grey cells humming. The photograph, the diary, the safe, all pointed to a history of betrayal that had reached into the present. Eleanor's fear, expressed in her letter to him, was no mere fancy. Someone in this house, or beyond it, had a motive to silence her. As he left the study, a faint creak echoed from the hall. Poirot paused, his senses alert. The manor, with its creaking floors and shadowed corners, seemed to whisper its secrets. He would listen, and he would uncover the truth. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, as if urging him to hurry. Poirot straightened his tie, his resolve firm. The past had spoken, and its whispers would lead him to Eleanor Ashbourne, or to her fate. Chapter 3. The Cryptic Letter. The grandfather clock in Ashbourne Manor's hall struck noon, its chimes reverberating through the silent corridors like a call to judgment. Hercule Poirot stood in the study, his gloved hands clasped behind his back, his eyes fixed on the mahogany desk where Lady Eleanor Ashbourne had last been seen. The overturned chair, still askew, seemed to mock his efforts to impose order on the chaos of her disappearance. The air was heavy with dust and secrets, and Poirot's little grey cells were alight with the puzzle before him. Hawkins, The butler had recounted the events of Eleanor's final evening. She had retired to the study after dinner, clutching a letter delivered by the evening post. Her agitation was palpable, he said, though she refused to share its contents. The letter, like Eleanor herself, was now missing, but its shadow loomed large. Poirot was certain it held the key to her fate. "Monsieur Hawkins," Poirot said, turning to the butler, who hovered nervously by the door, "you are certain the letter arrived by post?" "No courier? No hand delivery?" "Quite certain, sir," Hawkins replied. His voice strained. "I placed it on the hall table myself. It was in a plain envelope, addressed to her ladyship in a bold hand. I thought little of it until she reacted so strangely." Poirot nodded, his mustache twitching. "And this hand, it was unfamiliar?" "I couldn't say, sir. I only glimpsed it. Bean. Then we must recreate the scene. Show me where she sat, how she held it." Hawkins hesitated, then gestured to the desk.
"She was there, sir, by the lamp."
She opened the letter, read it quickly, then clutched it to her chest. Her face went pale, and she murmured something about debts unpaid. "Accepté," but she waved me away. "Debts unpaid," Poirot repeated softly, his mind turning over the phrase. He approached the desk, his fingers tracing the polished wood. The drawers remained locked, the faint scratch near the keyhole, a silent accusation. Someone, he suspected, had searched for that letter after Eleanor vanished. A shadow fell across the room as Gerald Ashbourne appeared in the doorway, his tweed jacket rumpled, his eyes bloodshot. "Still poking about, Poirot," he said, his tone laced with irritation. "You shall find nothing here but Eleanor Sepp's dramatics." Poirot turned, his smile polite but piercing. "Monsieur Gerald, dramatics do not cause a lady to vanish. You saw her with this letter. Oui? Tell me of it." Gerald leaned against the doorframe, his nonchalance forced. "I passed by the study around 9. She was reading something, looking like the world was ending. I asked what was wrong, but she snapped at me to leave her alone. Typical Eleanor, always making mountains out of molehills." "And you saw the letter itself?" Poirot pressed, his gaze unwavering. "Only a glimpse. White paper, black ink, nothing special." Gerald's fingers drummed against the doorframe, betraying his unease. Poirot stepped closer, his voice low. "And you, monsieur, have no debts unpaid, no reason to wish your cousin out of the way." Gerald Sepp's face darkened. "What are you implying? I Sepp's no saint. But I Sepp's never harm Eleanor. She Sepp's family." "Damn it." "Family," Poirot mused, "is often the cradle of motive. Your inheritance. It was diminished by her father Sid's will. Non." Gerald Sepp's jaw tightened. "That's Sepp's old history. I manage well enough."
"Ciao, vraiment?"
"Yet Hawkins tells me you requested a loan from Lady Eleanor last month. A substantial sum." Gerald Sepp's eyes flashed. "That Sepp's none of your business, Poirot. She refused, and I let it go. End of story." Poirot inclined his head, as if conceding the point, but his mind catalogued Gerald Sepp's defensiveness. The cousin Sepp's financial troubles were a thread to tug, and tug he would. "One last question, monsieur. Did you see anyone near the manor last night? A stranger, perhaps?" Gerald hesitated, then shrugged. "I was in my room by 10, saw nothing, heard nothing." But Poirot's instincts whispered otherwise. He dismissed Gerald with a nod, turning back to the desk. As the cousin's footsteps faded, Clara, the maid, entered, her eyes wide with apprehension. "Monsieur Poirot, I remembered something. Last night, before I went to bed, I saw a figure by the gate, near the woods, where I found her ladyship's scarf." Poirot sits, head snapped up. "A figure? Describe it, mademoiselle." "It was dark, sir, but tall, I think. Wearing a long coat. I only saw them for a moment before they slipped into the trees." "Merci, Clara." "This is most significant." Poirot's mind raced. A stranger lurking near the manor, a letter warning of unpaid debts, a missing heiress. The pieces were beginning to form a pattern, though the picture remained obscured. He returned to the hall, where Hawkins awaited. "The post-box, Monsieur Hawkins. Show me where the letter was collected." The butler led him outside to a rusted post-box at the manor's gate. Poirot examined it, noting fresh mud on the path nearby. The footprints matched those he had seen by the rose arbor, large, masculine, deliberate. Someone had been watching the manor, perhaps waiting for the letter's effect to unfold. Back inside, Poirot paused before Eleanor Sepp's portrait, her painted eyes seeming to implore him. "Debts unpaid," he murmured. "But whose debts, Lady Eleanor, and what price have you paid?" As he pondered, Mr. Reginald Thorne, the solicitor, arrived, his briefcase clutched tightly. His thin face was pale, his spectacles glinting in the dim light. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice clipped, "I understand you're investigating Lady Eleanor's absence. I assure you I know nothing of it." Poirot Sip's smile was enigmatic. "Monsieur Thorne, assurances are of little value without proof. You were here last night. Oui? You will tell me what you saw." Thorne adjusted his tie, his fingers trembling. "I dined with her ladyship, then retired early. I heard nothing unusual." "And this letter she received? You know of it?" Thorne shook his head, too quickly. "She mentioned no letter to me." Poirot Sip's eyes narrowed. The solicitor's nervousness was a beacon, guiding him toward another thread in the tapestry. "Bien. We shall speak again, Monsieur Thorne. For now I have much to consider." As Thorne retreated, Poirot stood alone in the hall, the clocks ticking a reminder of time slipping away. The letter, the figure in the woods, Gerald's debts, Thorne's unease, each was a note in a symphony of deception. He would conduct it to its conclusion, no matter how dark the melody. The manor groaned under the weight of its secrets, and Poirot, undaunted, prepared to unravel them one by one. Chapter 4. Shadows in the Village. The mist clung to the cobblestones of Thornwick village like a shroud, softening the outlines of its timbered cottages and the spire of its ancient church. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat buttoned against the damp chill, stepped from the hired car and surveyed the scene with a discerning eye. The village, nestled in the shadow of Ashborne Manor's hills, seemed to hold its breath as if aware of the mystery that had drawn him here. His moustache, immaculate despite the weather, twitched as he noted the curious glances from a pair of women by the bakery. Poirot was no stranger to scrutiny, but today it carried the weight of unspoken secrets. His purpose was clear: to trace Lady Eleanor Ashbourne's final public appearance. Hawkins had mentioned a charity event at the village hall 3 days prior, where Eleanor had been seen before retreating to the manor and vanishing. Poirot's little grey cells hummed with anticipation. The village, he suspected, held clues the manor's walls could not yield. He began at the village hall, a modest building with sagging eaves and a notice board plastered with faded flyers. Inside, the air smelled of wax and old hymnals. A caretaker, an elderly man named Mr. Dobbs, was sweeping the floor, his movements slow and deliberate. "Monsieur Dobbs," Poirot said, his voice cutting through the quiet, "I am Hercule Poirot, investigating the disappearance of Lady Eleanor Ashbourne. You were here during the charity event, oui?" Dobbs leaned on his broom, his rheumy eyes narrowing. I was. Her ladyship came, all dressed in silk, handing out donations like she always did. Kept to herself, though. Never one for chatter." Poirot nodded, his gloved fingers tapping his walking stick. "And did she seem troubled, agitated, perhaps?" Dobbs scratched his chin. "Now you mention it, she did look pale, kept glancing at the door like she expected someone. Left early, too, before the speeches were done."
Interessant.
"And who else was present?" "Strangers, perhaps." "Mostly locals," Dobbs said. "But there was a man I didn't know. Tall, dark coat, kept to the shadows by the back. He watched her ladyship something fierce, left right after she did." Poirot Sip's eyes gleamed. A tall figure in a dark coat. Clara Sip's shadowy visitor by the Manor Sip's gate came to mind. This man, he spoke to no one. "Not that I saw," slipped out quiet-like. "Merci, Monsieur Dobbs. You have been most helpful. Poirot tipped his hat and stepped outside, his mind turning over the new thread. The village hall had given him a glimpse of Eleanor's unease, but he needed more. He crossed the street to the Rose and Crown, the local pub where gossip flowed as freely as ale. The pub was dim, its low ceiling stained with years of smoke. A handful of patrons nursed pints, their conversation halting as Poirot entered. He approached the bar, where a barmaid with rosy cheeks and sharp eyes was polishing glasses. "Mademoiselle," he said, his charm disarming, "I am Hercule Poirot, seeking information about Lady Eleanor Ashbourne. You served at the charity event." "Non." The barmaid, who introduced herself as Annie, nodded. "I did, sir. Poured tea and served scones. Her ladyship was there, but she weren't set herself. Snappish almost, which ain't set like her." Poirot leaned closer, his voice low. "And did you see her speak with anyone unusual? A man, perhaps, in a dark coat?" Annie's Sept's eyes widened. I did. Outside by the hall Sept's side door. She was arguing with a man tall, like you said, with a hat pulled low. Couldn't Sept hear much, but she sounded angry. Said something about Sept no more payments. Sept, he grabbed her arm, but she pulled away and stormed off. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured. "And this man, you saw his face?" "Not clear, sir. It was dusk, and he kept his back to the light, but he had a rough voice, not local. I swear to it." Poirot's mind raced. Eleanor's confrontation suggested blackmail or coercion, tied perhaps to the cryptic letters "debts unpaid." He thanked Annie, slipping a coin across the bar, and stepped into the street. The mist had thickened, blurring the village into a dreamlike haze. His next lead lay at the village's edge, where Dobbs had mentioned a derelict cottage, once a gamekeeper's lodge, now abandoned. If the mysterious stranger had lingered near Thornwick, it was a likely hideout. The path to the cottage wound through gnarled oaks, their branches clawing at the sky. Poirot's polished shoes sank into the mud, but he pressed on, his senses alert. The cottage emerged from the fog, its roof caved in, its windows blind with grime. The door hung ajar, creaking in the wind. Poirot entered cautiously, his walking stick poised like a fencer's blade. Inside, the air was stale, thick with mildew. A broken chair and a rusted lantern were the only furnishings. But Poirot's eyes caught signs of recent disturbance: fresh ash in the hearth, a cigarette stub on the floor, its brand unfamiliar. He knelt, examining the stub with a handkerchief. "Curieux," he muttered. The ash suggested a fire lit within the past day. Someone had been here, perhaps watching the manor. As he rose, a glint in the corner caught his eye. Wedged between floorboards was a brass button, its surface etched with a faint anchor motif. Poirot pocketed it, his mind linking it to the dark-coated stranger. A sailor, perhaps, or a symbol of something else. The cottage offered no further clues, but its silence spoke volumes. This was a place of secrets, a waypoint in Eleanor's unraveling fate. Returning to the village, Poirot paused by the churchyard, where a young man in a flat cap was scribbling in a notebook. "Monsieur Poirot?" the man said, approaching. "I Sept Tom Harper with the Thornwick Gazette. Heard you Sept looking into Lady Eleanor Sept's disappearance. Care to comment?" Poirot's smile was polite but guarded. "The press, Monsieur Harper, is premature, but perhaps you have seen something useful. A stranger, perhaps, in the village." Harper's eyes flickered. "Funny you mention it. Saw a fellow yesterday near the cottage you just came from. Tall, dark coat, kept his head down. Thought he was just passing through." "Vraiment?" Poirot's gaze sharpened. "And you followed him?" Harper shrugged. "Tried to. Lost him in the woods. But I shall keep my eyes peeled, sir. This story is big." Poirot nodded, dismissing the journalist but noting his eagerness. Harper's curiosity could be useful or dangerous. As he returned to the car, the village seemed to close ranks behind him, its secrets buried in the mist. The dark-coated stranger, the brass button, Eleanor's argument, each was a piece of the puzzle. Back at the manor he would confront Gerald and Thorne again, for the truth was near, and Poirot would not rest until it was his. The church bell tolled, a mournful note in the gathering dusk, as Poirot's resolve hardened. Eleanor Ashburn was out there, and he would find her. Chapter 5. The Solicitor Secret. The drawing-room of Ashborne Manor was a study in faded grandeur, its velvet drapes moth-eaten and its crystal chandelier dulled by years of neglect. Hercule Poirot stood by the fireplace, his silhouette sharp against the flickering flames, his moustache a perfect curve of precision in the dim light. Before him sat Reginald Thorne, Eleanor Ashbourne's solicitor, his thin frame hunched in an armchair, his spectacles glinting with unease. The air was thick with tension, as if the manor itself held its breath, waiting for secrets to spill. Poirot had summoned Thorne for a private interview, his suspicions sharpened by the solicitor's abrupt departure to the village the morning after Eleanor's disappearance. Thorne's clipped assurances in the hall had rung hollow, and Poirot's little grey cells were alive with the certainty that this man knew more than he admitted. The brass button from the derelict cottage, the cryptic letter's mention of debts unpaid, and the shadowy figure in Thornwick, all pointed to a web of deceit, and Thorne, Poirot suspected, was entangled in its threads. "Monsieur Thorne," Poirot began, his voice smooth but edged with steel, "you are the guardian of Lady Eleanor Sep's affairs, oui? Her fortune, her estate, they pass through your hands. A position of trust, yet one that invites scrutiny when the lady vanishes." Thorne adjusted his tie, his fingers trembling. "I assure you, Monsieur Poirot, I have done nothing but serve her ladyship faithfully. Her disappearance is as shocking to me as to anyone." Poirot Sip's smile was enigmatic. "Vraiment? Yet you left the manor at dawn, without informing the household. A curious choice, none for a man so devoted." Thorneston's eyes darted to the window where rain lashed the panes. "I had business in Thornoak, urgent correspondence. My work doesn't stop because of unfortunate events." "Correspondence," Poirot mused, pacing slowly, perhaps related to the letter Lady Eleanor received the night she vanished, the one that left her so agitated. Thornester's face paled. "I know nothing of any letter. She mentioned no such thing during our dinner." Poirot stopped, his gaze piercing, and yet Monsieur Hawkins saw her reading it in the study, clutching it as if her life depended on it. A letter speaking of Fed debts unpaid. "You manage her finances. Surely you would know of such debts." Thorne gripped the armrests, his knuckles white. "Her ladyship Sip's accounts were in order. She had no debts. I swear it." Poirot Sips's eyebrows rose, but he said nothing, letting the silence press on Thorne Sip's nerves. He produced a small notebook from his pocket, flipping it open with deliberate care. "Let us speak of her accounts, then. You keep a ledger, oui? One that details her investments, her expenditures?" "Of course," Thorin said, his voice tight. "It stats at my office in Dorchester. I can fetch it if you wish." "Non, monsieur, you will describe it now. Large sums, perhaps, transferred recently, to anonymous recipients." Thorne Sep's spectacles slipped down his nose, and he pushed them up with a shaky hand. "There were routine transfers, charitable donations, investments, nothing unusual." Poirot Sip's smile vanished. "Monsieur Thorne, I do not appreciate half-truths. You will permit me to see this ledger, or I shall wonder why a solicitor hides his client Sip's affairs when she is missing." Thorne swallowed hard, his resolve crumbling. "Very well. There is a copy in my briefcase. In the hall. Estelle, fetch it." As Thorne rose, Poirot Sip's voice stopped him. "One moment. This briefcase, it was with you last night, oui? In your room, or perhaps elsewhere?" Thorne froze, his back to Poirot. Because, Poirot said softly, a man who leaves a manor at dawn, who knows nothing of a letter, who trembles at the mention of debts, may have reasons to search a study or a desk after dark. Thorne turned, his face ashen. "You sit accusing me of something, Monsieur Poirot, and I accept stand for it." "Calmez-vous, monsieur. I accuse no one yet. Fetch the ledger and we shall see." Thorne returned moments later, clutching a leather-bound ledger. He placed it on the table, his hands unsteady. Poirot opened it, his eyes scanning columns of figures with practiced speed. Most entries were mundane: estate repairs, staff wages, charitable gifts. But one caught his attention: a series of transfers, totaling £50,000, to an account labelled only VE. The last transfer was dated a week before Eleanor's disappearance. "Courier," Poirot murmured. "Who is this Setafee?" Thorne mopped his brow with a handkerchief. I don't know. Lady Eleanor instructed me to make the transfers. She said it was a private matter." Poirot Sipt's gaze was unrelenting. "And you, her solicitor, did not question such sums to an anonymous account?" "She was insistent," Thorne stammered. "I advised against it, but she wouldn't listen. She said it was to settle an old obligation." "An old obligation," Poirot repeated, his mind flashing to Margaret Sip's diary and the name Victor Ellswood. "And where were these funds sent?" "A bank in London," Thorne said, his voice barely audible. "The Metropolitan Trust. I have the details in my office." Poirot closed the ledger with a snap. "Bien, you will provide those details, and we shall see what this third Sip conceals. But tell me, monsieur, why do you fear this truth?" Thornesteck's eyes widened. "Fear? I said merely concerned for her ladyship. This is a delicate matter." "Delicate," Poirot said, "or dangerous? You tremble, monsieur, as if the shadow that took Lady Eleanor looms over you as well." Before Thorne could respond, a crash echoed from the hall. Poirot was at the door in an instant, followed by a flustered Thorne. Clara stood by a shattered vase, her face pale. "I stepped, sorry, sir," she gasped. "I heard voices and I tripped." Poirot Simpson's eyes narrowed, but he waved her away. "Pas de problème, mademoiselle. Clean it later." To Thorne he said, "We are not finished, monsieur. I will see you again." As Thorne retreated, Poirot lingered in the hall, his gaze falling on Eleanor's portrait, the initials VE, the London Bank. Thorne's fear, each was a thread in the tapestry of deceit. He recalled the brass button from the cottage, the dark-coated stranger, and the letter's warning. The trail was leading to London, and Poirot would follow it. Outside, the rain had ceased, but the sky remained heavy as if mourning the heiress's fate. Poirot straightened his tie, his resolve unshaken. Thorne's secret was but one piece of the puzzle, and he would uncover the rest, no matter how deeply they were buried. The manor's clock chimed, a reminder of time's relentless march. Poirot's little grey cells were at work, and the truth, he knew, was closer than ever. Chapter 6. A Trail to London. The train to London rattled through the mist-shrouded countryside, its rhythm a counterpoint to the restless hum of Hercule Poirot's thoughts. Seated in a first-class compartment, his overcoat neatly folded beside him, Poirot gazed out at the passing fields, his moustache a perfect crescent in the dim light of the carriage. The ledger from Reginald Thorne, with its cryptic transfers to VE, had pointed him to the Metropolitan Trust Bank in London, and Poirot was determined to unravel the thread that connected Eleanor Ashbourne's disappearance to this shadowy account. His little grey cells were alight with possibilities, each a spark in the puzzle he was piecing together. London greeted him with its familiar cacophony, the clatter of horse-drawn cabs, the shouts of newsboys, and the fog that clung to the city like a jealous lover. Poirot navigated the bustling streets with his usual precision, his polished shoes clicking on the cobblestones, as he made his way to St. James's, where the Metropolitan Trust stood, its marble facade a monument to wealth and secrecy. The bank's manager, a portly man named Mr. Harrow, greeted him with polite skepticism. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, adjusting his pince-nez, "we guard our client's privacy most stringently. What brings you here?" Poirot's sipped smile was disarming. "Monsieur Harrow, I investigate the disappearance of Lady Eleanor Ashbourne, a client of your bank. Her solicitor, Mr. Thorne, has revealed transfers to an account labelled Leder VES Spurt. I must know to whom these funds were sent." Harrow Sip's face tightened, but he nodded. "Very well. I still need to verify the details, but I can confirm that Lady Ashbore Sip's account was active here. Please, wait in my office." The office was a study in opulence. Mahogany paneling, a Persian rug, a crystal decanter gleaming on a sideboard. Poirot's eyes scanned the room, noting a photograph of Harrow with a group of men in formal attire, one of whom bore a striking resemblance to the man in Margaret Ashbourne's faded photograph, Victor Ellswood. Before he could ponder further, Harrow returned, clutching a file. "The account in question," he said, "belongs to a Mr. Vincent Ellaby. The transfers, totaling £50,000, were made over the past 6 months." "Vincent Ellaby," Poirot repeated, his mind racing, "and his address." Harrow hesitated. "A gentleman's Seps Club, the Carlton in Pall Mall. That Seps all we have." "Merci, Monsieur Harrow. You have been most cooperative." Poirot tipped his hat, but his thoughts were already elsewhere. Vincent Ellaby, V., was too close to Victor Ellswood to be coincidence. Was Ellaby an alias, or a new player, in this game of shadows? The Carlton Club was a bastion of privilege, its oak-panelled halls thick with cigar smoke and murmured secrets. Poirot, admitted as a guest after some deft persuasion, found himself in a lounge where men in tailored suits discussed politics and profit. He approached the steward, a dour man with a ledger of his own. "I seek Mr. Vincent Ellaby," Poirot said. "I understand he is a member." The steward Sepp's brow furrowed. "Mr. Ellaby, he Seps here occasionally, but not today. A financier, deals in overseas investments. I can leave a message if you like." "None that will not be necessary," Poirot said, his eyes scanning the room. A man in the corner, his face half hidden by a newspaper, caught his attention. His posture, rigid, attentive, suggested he was listening. Poirot approached, his voice low. "Monsieur, you know of Vincent Ellaby?" The man lowered his paper, revealing sharp features and eyes that gleamed with caution. "Who's Seps asking?" he said, his voice clipped. "I Sepsin, Charles Langston, a business associate of sorts." "Poirot, policing the diamond mine Seps collapse years ago. A cover-up, perhaps?" Langston's Sen's eyes narrowed. "The collapse, old history. Ellaby was involved, but he got out before it went under. Made a fortune, they say. He sends, not one to cross. Monsieur Poirot, dangerous man." "Interessant," Poirot said, his mind cataloguing the warning. "And where might I find him?" Langston shrugged, his casualness forced.
He keeps to himself.
"Try the docks. Rumor has it he Seb's got interests there. Shipping, maybe." Poirot nodded, filing the information away. The docks, a place of shadows and secrets, fit the profile of the dark-coated stranger haunting Thornwick. As he left the club, the fog seemed to thicken, mirroring the murkiness of the case. His next stop was a narrow street in Bloomsbury, where a former Ashbourne maid, Mary Dawson, now lived. Clara had mentioned Mary's dismissal after a dispute with Eleanor's father, and Poirot suspected she knew more about the family's past. Her modest flat smelled of lavender and tea. Mary, a wiry woman with wary eyes, greeted him cautiously. "What's this about Lady Eleanor?" she asked. Poirot Sip's tone was gentle but firm. "You served the Ashbores years ago, mademoiselle. What can you tell me of Victor Ellswood?" Mary Sells, face hardened. "A snake, that one. Worked with Sir Reginald on the diamond mine. When it failed, he vanished, leaving Sir Reginald to take the blame. I heard he sets back, though, under a new name. Calls himself Ellaby now." Poirot Sip's heart quickened. "Vincent Ellaby? You are certain?" "Certain as I can be," Mary said. "Saw him last year at a market. Same sly smile. Same sharp eyes. He didn't recognize me. Thank God." "Merci, Mademoiselle Dawson," Poirot said, rising. The pieces were falling into place. Ellswood, now Ellaby, tied to the mine's collapse, the mysterious transfers, and perhaps Eleanor's disappearance. The docks awaited, but first he would return to the manor to confront Thorne with this new name. As he stepped into the fog, London's pulse seemed to quicken, echoing his own. The trail was hot, and Poirot would follow it to its end. Chapter 7. The locked safe. The rain lashed against Ashborne Manor's windows, a relentless drumbeat that mirrored the tension within its walls. Hercule Poirot stood in the study, his silhouette framed by the flickering glow of the fireplace, his moustache a beacon of precision in the gloom. The hidden safe behind Sir Reginald Ashbourne's portrait loomed like a silent sentinel, its locked dial a challenge to Poirot's intellect. Since his return from London, where the name Vincent Ellaby had emerged as a shadow from the past, Poirot's little grey cells had been consumed with the need to uncover what secrets Eleanor Ashbourne had guarded so closely. The safe, he was certain, held answers. The journey back from London had been fraught with delays, the storm turning roads into quagmires, but Poirot's resolve was unshaken. He had summoned the household, Hawkins the butler, Clara the maid, Gerald Ashbourne, and Reginald Thorne to the study, their faces a gallery of apprehension. The air was thick with the scent of damp wool and suspicion, and Poirot's sharp eyes missed nothing. Hawkins' nervous fidgeting, Clara's downcast gaze, Gerald's scowl, and Thorne's pallor, as if he dreaded what the safe might reveal. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice cutting through the storm-sept's howl, "the disappearance of Lady Eleanor is no accident. This safe, hidden behind her father Sept's portrait, holds clues to her fate. Monsieur Hawkins, you will assist me in opening it." Hawkins stepped forward, his hands trembling as he produced a small key. "Her ladyship gave me this last month, sir, but the combination, she never shared it." Poirot nodded, his fingers tracing the safe's dial. "Bien, we shall try the obvious first. Dates, perhaps? Her birth? Her father's death?" He tested combinations, his movements precise, but the safe remained stubbornly locked. Clara, hovering near the door, cleared her throat. "Sir, she once mentioned her mother's birthday, October 15th, 1875. "Merci, Mademoiselle Clara," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. He spun the dial. October 15th, 75, and a soft click echoed in the room. The safe door swung open, revealing a velvet-lined interior. Inside were a stack of documents, a velvet pouch, and a single sheet of paper folded tightly. Poirot extracted them with care, his gloved hands steady despite the collective intake of breath from the onlookers. The documents were legal papers, yellowed with age, a copy of Sir Reginald's will naming Eleanor as sole heir and a codicil contested by Gerald's father, long deceased. The codicil mentioned a diamond, the Star of Kimberley, valued at a fortune, bequeathed to Eleanor but never found after Sir Reginald's death. Poirot's eyebrows rose. Curieux. A missing diamond, a contested will. This family is no stranger to greed. Gerald Sept's face reddened. "That's Sept's ancient history, Poirot. My father lost that fight years ago. I Sept's no claim to it." "Yet," Poirot said softly, "resentment lingers. None? And this diamond? Where is it now?" He turned to the pouch, loosening its drawstring. Empty. The absence was as telling as any jewel, suggesting someone had already claimed it or sought to. The folded paper was a letter, written in Eleanor's hand, dated a week before her disappearance. Poirot read aloud, "To whom it may concern, I have uncovered a truth that threatens my safety. The Star of Kimberley is not lost, but hidden, and its shadow falls on those I trusted. I fear V knows, and I must act before it is too late." The initials matched those in Thorne's ledger, tying the mysterious Vincent Ellaby to the heart of the mystery. Clara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "She knew she was in danger, sir. Why didn't she tell anyone?" Poirot Sip's gaze swept the room. "Perhaps, mademoiselle, she did not know whom to trust. Monsieur Thorne, you knew of this diamond." Thorne's spectacles glinted as he shook his head. "Only vaguely. Sir Reginald mentioned it once, but I assumed it was sold or stolen years ago." "Assumptions," Poirot said, his voice sharp, "are dangerous in a case of disappearance. And you, Monsieur Gerald, you have no interest in this jewel." Gerald Sep's scowl deepened. "I told you I set them past all that. Eleanor can keep her trinkets." Poirot Sip's smile was thin. Yet someone searched her study, her desk, perhaps this very safe. Someone who knew its value. A crack of thunder punctuated his words, and the lights flickered, casting the room into momentary darkness. Clara stifled a cry, and Hawkins clutched the doorframe. When the light returned, Poirot's eyes were fixed on Thorne, whose handkerchief was now a crumpled ball in his fist. "Monsieur Thorne, you tremble again. The mention of V, it unsettles you." I know no one by that name," Thorne stammered, but his eyes betrayed him, darting to the safe as if it might accuse him further. Before Poirot could press, a gust of wind rattled the windows, and Hawkins spoke up. "Sir, the storm sifts worsening. The roads are flooded. No one can leave tonight." "Parfait," Poirot said, his tone almost cheerful. "Then we are all prisoners of the truth." "Non. No one shall escape Hercule Poirot sipped scrutiny." He dismissed the group, but not before noting Clara's lingering glance at the safe, Gerald's clenched fists, and Thorne's hurried exit. Alone, Poirot examined the documents again, his mind weaving connections: the diamond, Vincent Ellaby, the contested will, and Eleanor's fear. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil within the manor, each clap of thunder a reminder of the urgency of his task. He stepped to the window, peering into the rain-soaked darkness. The footprints by the rose arbor, the brass button from the cottage, the shadowy figure in Thornwick, all pointed to an outsider, yet the safe's contents suggested betrayal from within. Was Ellaby manipulating someone in the household, or was he a scapegoat for a closer enemy? As lightning illuminated the grounds, Poirot's gaze fell on the path to the woods, where Clara had found Eleanor's scarf. The storm might trap them, but it would also trap the truth. He would watch, listen, and deduce, for the locked safe had spoken, and its secrets were only the beginning. The manor groaned under the storm's assault, and Poirot, undaunted, prepared for the revelations to come. Chapter 8. The Midnight Intruder. The storm raged on outside Ashborne Manor, its howling winds and driving rain battering the ancient walls, as if seeking to unearth the secrets within. Inside, the house was cloaked in darkness, the flickering oil lamps casting long, wavering shadows across the corridors. Hercule Poirot, unable to sleep, sat in his guest room, his notebook open before him, his little grey cells sorting through the day's revelations, the star of Kimberley, Vincent Ellaby, and the contested will from the safe. The manor's enforced isolation, courtesy of the flooded roads, had turned it into a pressure cooker of suspicion, and Poirot sensed the truth was near, if only he could seize it. A faint creak broke his reverie, sharp and deliberate, unlike the storm's random groans. Poirot's head snapped up, his moustache twitching. The sound came from the corridor, near Lady Eleanor Ashbourne's suite. He rose silently, slipping his dressing gown over his immaculate pyjamas, and grasped his walking stick, its silver handle cool in his palm. With the stealth of a cat, he opened his door and peered into the darkened hall. The creak came again, followed by a soft thud from Eleanor's room. Poirot glided forward, his polished shoes silent on the threadbare carpet. The door to her suite was ajar, a sliver of moonlight spilling through. He paused, his senses alert, and heard the rustle of papers and the faint scrape of furniture being moved. An intruder, here in the dead of night. What did they seek? Poirot pushed the door open, his voice cutting through the darkness. "Qu'est-ce là? Show yourself, or face Hercule Poirot." A figure froze by the vanity, cloaked in a dark coat, their face obscured by shadow. For a moment time held its breath, then the intruder bolted, shoving past the four-poster bed toward the window. Poirot lunged, his stick raised, but the figure was agile, wrenching the window open and leaping into the storm. The curtains billowed wildly as rain lashed the room. "Mon Dieu!" Poirot exclaimed, racing to the window. The intruder landed in the sodden garden below, stumbling but regaining footing, and sprinted toward the woods. Poirot, undeterred by the rain soaking his dressing gown, noted the figure's height, tall, as Clara had described the stranger by the gate, and the glint of something dropped in their haste. He would investigate that later. For now, pursuit was paramount. He hurried downstairs, ignoring the ache in his knees, and flung open the garden door. The storm roared, the wind tearing at his clothes, but Poirot pressed on, following the intruder's path toward the rose arbor. Lightning illuminated the woods, revealing a cloaked silhouette vanishing among the trees. The mud was treacherous, and Poirot's shoes sank deep, but his resolve was iron. He reached the arbor, panting, and scanned the darkness. The intruder was gone, swallowed by the night. Cursing the weather but not his effort, Poirot retraced his steps, his eyes scouring the ground. Near the window beneath Eleanor's room he found it, a monogrammed handkerchief, sodden but intact, embroidered with the initials TH in elegant script. "Curieux," he murmured, pocketing it with a gloved hand. Tom Harper, the journalist from Thornwick, came to mind. His initials matched, and his curiosity about the case had been too keen. Was he more than a nosy reporter? Back inside, Poirot shook off the rain and summoned the household to the drawing-room, heedless of the hour. Hawkins, Clara, Gerald, and Thorne appeared, bleary-eyed and dishevelled, their faces a mix of confusion and alarm. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot said, his voice steady despite his soaked attire. An intruder was in Lady Eleanor's room, searching for something. This handkerchief with the initials TH was left behind. Who can explain this? Clara gasped, her hand to her mouth.
Gerald snorted. "That scribbler.
Aesep's been sniffing around for a story. Probably thought Aesep find something juicy." Poirot's gaze turned to Thorne, whose spectacles glinted nervously. "And you, Monsieur Thorne, you know this Harper?" "Only by name," Thorne said, his voice tight. "He wrote to me once, asking about the estate. I ignored him." Poirot Sift's eyes narrowed, sensing half-truths. "Bien. Tomorrow I shall visit Monsieur Harper. But tonight I ask, did any of you hear this intruder before I did?" Silence met his question, broken only by the storm's rumble. Hawkins shook his head. Clara clutched her shawl, Gerald glared at the floor, and Thorne mopped his brow. Poirot dismissed them, but not before noting Clara's lingering glance at Gerald, as if fearful of his temper. Alone, Poirot returned to Eleanor's room, the storm's fury a fitting backdrop to his thoughts. The vanity's drawers were ajar, papers scattered. Someone had been desperate. He examined the mess, finding nothing new but noting the absence of Eleanor's diary, which Clara had mentioned in passing. Had the intruder taken it, or was it hidden elsewhere? He sat on the bed, his mind weaving connections: the handkerchief, Harper's presence near the cottage, the safe's contents, and Vincent Ellaby's shadow. The initials T.H. could be a coincidence, but Poirot distrusted coincidences. Harper's alibi, claiming to have lost the dark-coated stranger in the woods, now seemed flimsy. Was he working alone, or with someone in the household? A flicker of movement caught his eye. A curtain stirred, though the window was now closed. Poirot rose, his stick ready, but found only a draught from the storm. Yet the sensation of being watched lingered, as if the manor itself conspired against him. He returned to his room, locking the door, and opened his notebook. The intruder's boldness suggested urgency. Perhaps they knew Poirot was closing in. The handkerchief pointed to Harper, but Gerald's resentment, Thorne's fear, and Clara's nervousness were equally telling. And Ellaby, the ghost from the past, loomed over all. As the clock struck 2, the storm showed no sign of abating, its violence a mirror to the turmoil within. Poirot closed his eyes, his little grey cells relentless. The midnight intruder had left a clue, and it would lead him closer to Eleanor Ashbourne, or to the one who wished her gone. Chapter 9. The Heiress Sept's Diary. The storm had settled into a sullen drizzle by morning, cloaking Ashborne Manor in a grey veil that seemed to mirror the unease within its walls. Hercule Poirot stood in Lady Eleanor Ashbourne's bedroom, his gloved hands clasped behind his back, his moustache a beacon of order amidst the chaos of the previous night's intrusion. The scattered papers on the vanity, disturbed by the midnight intruder, had yielded no new clues, but Poirot's little grey cells were undeterred. Pointing to the journalist Tom Harper had sharpened his suspicions, yet he sensed Eleanor herself held the key to the mystery. Somewhere in this room, he believed, lay a piece of her mind, a record of her fears. The household was subdued, the storm's aftermath keeping them confined. Gerald Ashbourne sulked in the drawing-room, Reginald Thorne buried himself in paperwork, and Clara flitted about with nervous energy. Hawkins, ever dutiful, had reported no further disturbances, but Poirot's instincts told him the intruder's failure would not deter them for long. He returned his attention to Eleanor's room, his eyes scanning every detail, the silk drapes, the four-poster bed, the vanity's crystal vials. The single pearl earring from his first visit still nagged at him, a sign of haste, perhaps, or struggle. He approached the bookshelf, its volumes untouched by the intruder's haste. Running his fingers along the spines, he noted their uniformity save for one, a worn copy of Pride and Prejudice, slightly askew. Poirot pulled it gently, and a soft click sounded. A panel in the shelf slid open, revealing a small compartment. Inside lay a leather-bound diary, its cover embossed with Eleanor's initials, E.A. His heart quickened. "Mon Dieu," he murmured. "You have spoken at last, Lady Eleanor." Settling at the vanity, Poirot opened the diary, its pages filled with Eleanor's elegant script. The entries, spanning the past year, painted a portrait of a woman besieged by doubt. "March 12th, she wrote. "Gerald asked for another loan today. His desperation unsettles me. Does he resent me for father's will?" Another entry, dated June 5th, read, "Thorne grows evasive about the transfers to V.E. I fear I've been too trusting." What does he hide? Poirot's eyes narrowed, recalling the ledger's mysterious account. Vincent Ellaby's shadow loomed larger. A later entry, from a month ago, struck a darker note. "I am watched. A man in a dark coat lingers near the gate. I told Clara to stay vigilant, but I cannot shake this fear." The letter today warned of debts unpaid. Is it V or someone closer? Poirot's mind flashed to the cryptic letter Hawkins had described, now missing, and the tall figure seen in Thornwick. Eleanor's fear was palpable, her trust eroded by those around her. The final entry, dated the day before her disappearance, was the most revealing. "I have no choice but to confront the truth. The Star of Kimberley is safe, but its secret weighs heavy. I've arranged a meeting tomorrow at the chapel, where none will overhear. If I am wrong, I risk everything. If I am right, I may not return. The code is 739, lest I forget." Below, in hurried script, was a cryptic phrase, "The rose blooms at dusk." Poirot leaned back, his little grey cells ablaze. The chapel, likely the abandoned one near Thornwick, mentioned by locals, suggested a clandestine rendezvous. The code, 739, could unlock another secret, perhaps a hidden compartment or safe. And the phrase, "The rose blooms at dusk," was surely a cipher, a signal for her contact. Was Eleanor lured to the chapel, or did she plan her own disappearance to escape a threat? He tested the diary's back cover, suspecting further concealment, but found only a pressed rose petal, its fragrance faint. The petal, he noted, matched those by the rose arbor where Clara found Eleanor's scarf, a connection perhaps to her final moments. Closing the diary, Poirot pocketed it, determined to keep it from prying hands. The intruder's search suggested they sought this very document, and he would not let it fall into theirs. Descending to the drawing-room, Poirot found Gerald nursing a brandy, his eyes bloodshot. "Monsieur Gerald," Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild, "Lady Eleanor wrote of your requests for money. You pressed her often." "None." Gerald sipped glass clinked against the table. "She told you that. Damn her diary-keeping." "Yes, I asked for loans. I sept him in debt, Poirot, but I didn't sept hurt her." "Debt," Poirot mused, "is a powerful motive, and this chapel near Thornwick, did she ever mention it?" Gerald frowned. "The old ruin? Not to me. She was always secretive, sneaking off to read or think." "Why?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Merely a thread, monsieur. I follow many." He turned to Clara, who entered with a tray of tea. "Mademoiselle Clara, you knew of her ladyship Set's habits. Did she visit this chapel?" Clara Sip's hands shook, rattling the cups. "Once or twice, sir. She said it was peaceful. I never went with her." "Merci," Poirot said, noting her unease. He would visit the chapel soon, but first he confronted Thorn, who lingered by the window. "Monsieur Thorn, Eleanor doubted your honesty. These transfers to Veii, she suspected you knew more than you admitted." Thorn Sept's face paled. "She wrote that. I swear, Monsieur Poirot, I followed her orders. I never met this Veillez." Poirot Stint's gaze was unrelenting. "Yet you tremble, monsieur. The truth will out, and I shall find it." As the household dispersed, Poirot returned to the study, the diary's weight in his pocket, a reminder of Eleanor's vulnerability. The coded message, the chapel, the rose petal, each was a step toward her fate. Was she betrayed by Gerald's greed, Thorn's duplicity, or Harper's prying? Or did Vincent Ellaby, the ghost of her father's ruin, orchestrate it all? The drizzle outside whispered against the windows, and Poirot's resolve hardened. The heiress's diary had bared her soul, and he would honor her trust by uncovering the truth, no matter how dark. Chapter 10. The Chapel Sept's Secret. The morning mist hung low over the Dorset hills, shrouding the path to the abandoned chapel in a veil of secrecy that suited Hercule Poirot's purpose. His polished shoes, now caked with mud, navigated the uneven trail from Ashborne Manor to the outskirts of Thornwick, where the chapel stood, its crumbling spire piercing the fog like a forgotten sentinel. Eleanor Ashbourne's diary, with its cryptic mention of a meeting at this very place, had drawn him here, and Poirot's little grey cells were alight with anticipation. The code 739 and the phrase "the rose blooms at dusk" suggested a rendezvous gone wrong, perhaps the key to her vanishing. The chapel emerged from the mist, its stone walls choked with ivy, its stained glass windows shattered into jagged mosaics. The air was heavy with damp earth and decay, and the silence was profound, broken only by the drip of water from the eaves. Poirot paused at the warped wooden door, his gloved hand resting on his walking stick, his moustache a beacon of order in the desolation. He pushed the door open, its hinges groaning in protest, and stepped into the shadowed interior. The chapel's pews were splintered, its altar draped in cobwebs, but Poirot's sharp eyes caught signs of recent disturbance: scuffed dust on the floor, a broken candle stub, and a faint smear of mud near the altar. He knelt, examining the marks. Footprints, 2 sets, one smaller, likely a woman's, and another larger, masculine, suggested a meeting, perhaps a confrontation. Near the altar, a scrap of fabric caught his attention, a torn piece of silk, matching the color of Eleanor's dress, as described by Clara. "Mon Dieu," he murmured. She was here. His gaze swept the chapel, settling on a rusted iron candelabrum. Recalling the diary's code, he counted its arms. 7. He twisted the 3rd arm, then the 9th, and a faint click echoed. A stone in the altar shifted, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a silver locket, its surface engraved with a rose. Poirot opened it, revealing a photograph of a man, dark-haired, sharp-featured, unfamiliar. The back bore the initials. "J.L. Caillou," he said, pocketing the locket. A romantic entanglement, perhaps, or a deception. The signs of struggle troubled him. The torn fabric, the disturbed dust, the locket, they painted a picture of a meeting that had turned violent. Had Eleanor come here willingly, only to be ambushed, or had she fled, leaving the locket as a clue? The phrase, "the rose blooms at dusk," suggested a signal, perhaps for this J.L., but who was he? Poirot stepped outside, scanning the surrounding woods. The mist obscured any further tracks, but a faint glint caught his eye, a broken watch half buried in the mud. Its hand stopped at 8:47. Dusk, the time of the rose's bloom. The watch was a man's, its band worn but expensive. Another clue, tying the chapel to Eleanor's final moments. Returning to the manor, Poirot's mind churned. The locket's photograph did not match Vincent Ellaby's description from Mary Dawson, nor did it resemble Gerald Thorne or Harper. A new player, perhaps, or a red herring. He summoned Gerald to the drawing-room, where the fire crackled weakly against the morning chill. Gerald's face was haggard, his temper frayed. "What now, Poirot?" he snapped. "More accusations." "Monsieur Gerald." Poirot said, his voice calm but piercing. Lady Eleanor met someone at the chapel, the night she vanished. A man, perhaps, with the initials J.L. You know of such a person. Gerald Sept's eyes widened, then narrowed. No idea. Eleanor had her secrets, lovers, probably. She never told me anything. Poirot produced the locket, watching Gerald Sept's reaction. This was found at the chapel, with signs of a struggle. A torn piece of her dress, a broken watch. You were at the manor that night. Oui, yet you heard nothing. Gerald Sept's jaw clenched. I was in my room, drunk. I told you I saw nothing. Vraiment? Poirot Sept's gaze was unrelenting. Your temper, monsieur, it flares quickly. Did Eleanor Sept's secrets, her wealth, her diamond provoke you? Gerald slammed his fist on the table. Damn it, Poirot. I didn't set touch her. Yes, I wanted money, but I wouldn't set hurt her. She Sept's my cousin. Poirot Sept's smile was thin. Family, monsieur, is no shield against betrayal. I shall learn who Jael is, and you will tell me if you remember anything. As Gerald stormed out, Poirot turned to Clara, who had entered with a tray, her hands trembling. Mademoiselle Clara, you knew of her ladyship Sept's visits to the chapel. Did she ever speak of a man, perhaps one she met in secret? Clara Sept's eyes darted away. She mentioned someone once, sir. A friend, she called him. But she wouldn't say more. I thought it was just fancy. Mercy, Poirot said, noting her unease. He dismissed her, then sought Thorne, who was in the study, poring over papers. Monsieur Thorne, this locket, do the initials J.L. mean anything to you? Thorne Sept's spectacles slipped as he shook his head. No, Monsieur Poirot. I handled her finances, not her personal affairs. Yet his fingers twitched, betraying nervousness. Poirot filed it away, his mind returning to the chapel's clues. The locket suggested a personal connection, but the struggle pointed to danger. Was J.L. a lover, a blackmailer, or both? And how did he connect to Vincent Ellaby, the diamond, or the intruder? As evening fell, the manor felt more oppressive, its shadows deeper. Poirot sat in the study, the locket in his hand, its rose engraving a silent taunt. The diary's code, the chapel's secrets. The watch stopped at dusk. Each was a piece of the puzzle, but the picture remained incomplete. He would question Tom Harper next, for the journalist's handkerchief and his presence near the cottage were too convenient. The wind stirred outside, whispering through the manor's cracks. Poirot's resolve was unshaken. The chapel had revealed Eleanor's desperation, and he would follow its trail to the truth, no matter how perilous the path. Chapter 11. The Diamond Sept's Curse. The fire in Ashborne Manor's library crackled weakly, its glow barely touching the shadowed corners where Hercule Poirot stood, his silhouette sharp against the sagging bookshelves. The storm had relented, leaving a heavy silence that seemed to press against the manor's walls, as if the house itself mourned Eleanor Ashbourne's absence. Poirot's little grey cells were ablaze, piecing together the mosaic of clues, the locket with J.L., his photograph, the chapel's signs of struggle, the diary's coded message, and the star of Kimberley, the missing diamond that loomed over the case like a cursed star. Today he would unravel its history, for the diamond, he sensed, was the heart of the mystery. Poirot had spent the morning poring over Sir Reginald Ashbourne's papers retrieved from the safe in Chapter 7. Among them was a journal from his days in colonial Africa, where the diamond was first unearthed. The entries painted a vivid picture, a sweltering expedition in 1885, the Kimberley mines a chaos of ambition and betrayal. Sir Reginald, then a young entrepreneur, had partnered with Victor Ellswood to secure the Star of Kimberley, a gem of unparalleled clarity, said to weigh 80 carats. But the journal hinted at a darker truth. Ellswood's greed knows no bounds, Reginald wrote. He demands a greater share, threatening to expose our methods. I fear the diamond carries a curse, for all who touch it meet ruin. Poirot closed the journal, his moustache twitching. The curse was superstition, perhaps, but the greed was real. Ellswood, now Vincent Ellaby, had survived the mine's collapse, while Reginald bore the blame. Had Eleanor's discovery of this history, Perhaps through her mother's diary or the safe's documents prompted her to confront Ellaby, leading to her disappearance. He summoned Clara to the library, her pale face and trembling hands betraying her unease. "Mademoiselle Clara," Poirot said, his voice gentle but probing, "you have served Lady Eleanor faithfully, yet you hold something back. The star of Kimberley. She spoke of it. Non?" Clara Sepp's eyes widened, and she clutched her apron. She did, sir, a few weeks ago. She found papers in the safe, said the diamond wasn't set lost like everyone thought. She was afraid, said it brought nothing but trouble." "Trouble," Poirot repeated, leaning closer. "From whom, Monsieur Gerald, perhaps? His debts are many, and a diamond would solve them." Clara hesitated, then whispered, "It wasn't set." "Just Mr. Gerald, sir. I overheard her arguing with Mr. Thorne, too. She accused him of hiding things about the diamond, about those transfers to V, and then there was someone else." But Poirot's gaze sharpened. "Someone else? This J.L. from the locket?" Well, Clara shook her head. "I don't know, sir, but she met someone in secret at the chapel. I saw her leave one evening, carrying a small box. I think it was the diamond." Poirot Sipt's heart quickened. "Mon Dieu, mademoiselle, why did you not speak of this before?" "I was scared, sir," Clara said, tears welling. "I thought she hadn't come back, but then I found her scarf, and I think Mr. Gerald knew about the diamond. He was in her room once, looking at her desk, before she vanished." The Poirot Sipt's eyes gleamed. A confession, however reluctant, was a crack in the Manor Sipt's facade. "Merci, Clara. You have been brave. Now go, but say nothing of this." As Clara fled, Poirot turned to the journal again, his mind weaving connections. The diamond's curse was no myth. It was the greed it inspired. Gerald's desperation, Thorne's evasions, and Ellaby's shadow all pointed to a struggle for the gem. But who was J.L., and how did he fit into this web? He sought Gerald in the drawing-room, where the cousin was pacing, his face flushed with agitation. "Monsieur Gerald," Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild, "the star of Kimberley is not lost, as you claimed. Eleanor hid it, and you knew, we." Gerald Sepp's eyes blazed. "What are you on about, Poirot? That diamond Sepp's a myth, gone years ago." "None," Poirot said, producing the safe Sipes documents. "These prove it existed, and Eleanor believed it was here. You searched her room, perhaps, seeking it." Gerald Sepp's fists clenched. "I looked for papers. Yes, to settle my debts, but I didn't find any diamond, and I didn't touch Eleanor." Poirot Sepp's smile was thin. "Yet Clara saw you, monsieur, and the chapel, did you follow her there? To her secret meeting?" Gerald Sepp's face paled. I went to the chapel once, looking for her. She wasn't Sept there, I swear it." Poirot dismissed him, his mind turning to Thorne. The solicitor was in the study, his papers scattered as if to distract from his fear. "Monsieur Thorne," Poirot said, "Eleanor accused you of concealing truths about the diamond. You knew it was hidden. Non?" Thornish, spectacles slipped.
She
asked about it."
Yes.
"I told her it was dangerous to pursue, that Sip's all." "Dangerous," Poirot mused. "Because of Vincent Ellaby, or because others in this house coveted it?" Thorne said nothing, his silence damning. Poirot left him, his thoughts returning to the chapel's locket, and the initials J.L., the diamond's history, its theft, its curse, suggested a motive for murder or abduction, but Eleanor's diary hinted at her own agency. Had she planned to hand the diamond to J.L., or was she betrayed? As evening fell, the Manor's oppressive air grew heavier. Poirot stood by the library window, the journal in hand, its pages a window to a past that haunted the present. The diamond's curse was not supernatural but human: greed, betrayal, and secrets. Clara's confession, Gerald's denial, and Thorne's fear were pieces of the puzzle, but the final picture eluded him. The wind stirred outside, carrying whispers of the past. Poirot's resolve was unshaken. The star of Kimberley had drawn blood before, and he would ensure it did so no longer. Chapter 12. The Gathering Storm. The drawing-room of Ashborne Manor was a crucible of tension, its heavy drapes drawn against the dusk, the fire casting flickering shadows on the faces of those assembled. Hercule Poirot stood at the centre, his diminutive figure commanding the room, his moustache a beacon of precision in the gathering gloom. The storm that had trapped them had passed, but a new tempest brewed within, as Poirot prepared to unravel the web of deceit surrounding Lady Eleanor Ashbourne's disappearance. His little grey cells had woven the clues into a tapestry, and now he would lay it bare. Seated before him were the suspects: Hawkins, the butler, his hands clasped tightly; Clara the maid, her eyes red from sleepless worry; Gerald Ashbourne, his scowl barely masking his unease; Reginald Thorne, the solicitor, whose spectacles glinted with nervous sweat; and Tom Harper, the journalist, summoned from Thornwick, his notebook clutched like a shield. Each bore the weight of Poirot's scrutiny, and the air crackled with anticipation. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice clear and deliberate. Lady Eleanor Ashbourne vanished from this manor, leaving behind a trail of secrets: a letter warning of debts unpaid, a diary bearing her fears, a locket with a stranger's face, and the Star of Kimberley, a diamond cursed by greed. Tonight Hercule Poirot will reveal the truth, but first I challenge your lies. He turned to Hawkins, his gaze piercing. "Monsieur Hawkins, you saw her ladyship with the cryptic letter, yet you claim ignorance of its contents. But you lingered in the study." Non, listening, perhaps, to her murmurs of fear. Hawkins flushed, his voice unsteady. I only wished to serve her, sir. I heard nothing clear, only her distress." Poirot nodded, letting the doubt linger, and moved to Clara. "Mademoiselle Clara, you found her scarf by the rose arbor, yet you withheld your knowledge of her secret meetings at the chapel. You saw her with a box, perhaps containing the diamond, yet you stayed silent. Why?" Clara Sepp's hands trembled. "I was afraid, sir. I thought she astute come back. And I didn't want to betray her trust." "Trust," Poirot mused, his eyes shifting to Gerald. "Monsieur Gerald, your debts drove you to beg from Eleanor, yet she refused. You searched her room. You followed her to the chapel, and you knew of the Star of Kimberley. Your resentment is a motive. Non?" Gerald Sepp's fists clenched, his voice a growl. "I said it before, Poirot. I didn't harm her. Yes, I wanted money, but I never hurt my cousin." Poirot Sepp's smile was thin, his gaze turning to Thorne. "Monsieur Thorne, you hid the transfers to Verdi Vincent Ellaby, a ghost from Sir Reginald Sepp's past. Eleanor accused you of duplicity, and your fear betrays you. Did you conspire with Ellaby to silence her?" Thorne mopped his brow, his voice cracking. "I followed her orders, Monsieur Poirot. I knew nothing of Ellaby Sepp's plans, if he had any. I Sepp's no traitor." Poirot paused, letting the accusation hang, then faced Harper. "And you, Monsieur Harper, with your monogrammed handkerchief left by an intruder in her room, you were seen near the derelict cottage, following a dark-coated stranger. Are you merely a journalist, or something more?" Harper Sepp's eyes darted, his bravado faltering. "I stun. After a story, Poirot. Nothing else. That handkerchief, it seems common, could be anyone sells. I didn't break into her room." Poirot paced, his walking stick tapping the floor. "Curieux, how each of you claims innocence, yet the clues tell a different tale. The letter spoke of debts unpaid, tying to Ellaby's ruinous past with Sir Reginald's diamond mine. The diary revealed Eleanor's fear of betrayal, her meeting at the chapel with a man, J.L., whose locket we found, the torn dress, the broken watch, stopped at dusk. These speak of a struggle, and the diamond, hidden by Eleanor, coveted by all." He stopped, his eyes sweeping the room. "Let us reconstruct her final night. She received the letter warning her of danger. She planned to meet J.L. at the chapel, perhaps to give him the diamond, to end the curse. But someone followed her, someone who knew her secret. Was it you, Monsieur Gerald? driven by greed? Or you, Monsieur Thorn, protecting your own secrets? Or perhaps Monsieur Harper, seeking a scandal? Accusations erupted, voices overlapping. Gerald shouted at Thorn, blaming his shady dealings. Thorn accused Harper of stirring trouble. Clara sobbed, pleading for Eleanor's safety. Hawkins remained silent, his face pale. Poirot raised a hand, silencing them. The truth is near, but one piece eludes me. The locket's J.L. Who is he? A lover, a savior, or a deceiver? Clara spoke, her voice barely audible. She loved someone, sir. I saw a letter once, not the one from that night, but another, signed Sede. She hid it, but it spoke of a future together. Poirot's sitf's eyes gleamed. Merci, Clara. This fears J. Sitf may be our key, but the diamond. Where is it now? Stolen, hidden, or lost in the chapel sitf struggle? Gerald slammed his hand on the armrest. If I had that diamond, do you think I should still be here drowning in debt? Thorn muttered. It sets cursed, that gem. It ruined Sir Reginald. And now Eleanor. Harper scribbled furiously, earning a glare from Poirot. Monsieur Harper, your curiosity is dangerous. If you know more, speak now. I know nothing, Harper insisted, but his grip on the notebook tightened. Poirot stepped back, his voice softening. The manor holds one final secret, and I shall find it. Tomorrow I return to the chapel, to test the code 739 sept again, for I suspect another hiding place. But tonight I watch you all, for the guilty cannot hide from Hercule Poirot. The fire sputtered, casting the room into deeper shadow. The suspects exchanged glances, fearful, accusing, guarded. Poirot dismissed them, his mind racing. The locket, the diary, the diamond, Ellaby's shadow, each was a thread, but the final knot remained untied. A conspirator with Ellaby, or a victim like Eleanor, and who had the diamond now? As the group dispersed, the manor creaked, its silence oppressive. Poirot stood alone, the weight of the case pressing on him. The gathering storm had broken, but the truth was still brewing, and he would seize it before it slipped away. Chapter 13. The Vanishing Revealed. The drawing-room of Ashborne Manor was bathed in the pale light of dawn, the storm's aftermath leaving the air crisp and the windows streaked with rain. Hercule Poirot stood before the fireplace, his diminutive figure commanding the space, his moustache a symbol of unyielding precision. The suspects, Hawkins, Clara, Gerald Ashbourne, Reginald Thorn, and Tom Harper, sat in a tense semicircle, their faces etched with apprehension. The weight of Eleanor Ashbourne's disappearance hung over them, but Poirot's little grey cells had unravelled the tapestry of deceit, and now he would lay bare the truth. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, his voice resonant with certainty. Lady Eleanor Ashbourne vanished, leaving a trail of clues, a cryptic letter, a diary of fear, a locket with a stranger's face, and the Star of Kimberley, a diamond cursed by greed. Hercule Poirot has followed these threads, and today the vanishing is revealed. He paced slowly, his walking stick tapping the floor. Let us begin with the letter, warning of debts unpaid. It was no coincidence. It came from Vincent Ellaby, once Victor Ellswood, a man ruined by Sir Reginald's diamond mine. Ellaby, seeking revenge, demanded payment from Eleanor, who had uncovered his identity through her mother's diary. She paid him through Monsieur Thorn's transfers to keep his silence about her father's past. Thorn shifted, his spectacles glinting. Poirot continued. But Eleanor grew weary of blackmail. Her diary revealed a plan to confront Ellaby at the chapel, using the Star of Kimberley as leverage. The code 739, and the phrase "the rose blooms at dusk" marked this meeting. She hid the diamond, fearing betrayal. Poirot turned to Clara. Mademoiselle Clara, you saw her with a box, perhaps the diamond, heading to the chapel. You feared for her, yet said nothing, hoping she would return. Clara nodded, tears in her eyes. I should have spoken, sir. I thought she was safe. Poirot's gaze softened, then hardened as he faced Gerald. Monsieur Gerald, your debts drove you to desperation. You knew of the diamond, searched her room, followed her to the chapel. Did you confront her there? Gerald Sip's face reddened. I told you, I didn't Sept hurt her. I went to the chapel. Yes, but she wasn't Sept there. Précisément, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming, because someone else reached her first. The locket with the initials J.L. suggested a lover, Jonathan Langley, a name I uncovered through inquiries in London. Langley, a former associate of Ellaby's, had charmed Eleanor, promising a future free of her family's curse. She planned to give him the diamond, to escape with him. He produced the locket, its rose engraving catching the light. But Langley was no savior. He was Ellaby's pawn, sent to lure Eleanor. At the chapel she met him, but Ellaby was there too. The torn dress, the broken watch stopped at dusk. These mark a struggle. Ellaby took the diamond, and Eleanor was taken. A gasp rippled through the room. Poirot turned to Harper. Monsieur Harper, your handkerchief, found after the intruder's visit, suggested guilt. But you were merely a journalist chasing a story. You followed Ellaby's trail, saw him near the cottage, but lost him. Your curiosity nearly cost you. None. Harper nodded. His bravado. Gone. Poirot's gaze shifted to Thorne. Monsieur Thorne, you facilitated Ellaby's blackmail, knowing his identity. You feared exposure, for your own dealings with him were not entirely honest, but you did not act alone. Thorne's face crumpled. I had no choice, Monsieur Poirot. Ellaby threatened to ruin me. Ah says, Poirot's voice was a whip. The true culprit is not among you, but his shadow touched you all. Vincent Ellaby orchestrated Eleanor Sett's abduction, using Langley to gain her trust. He took her to London, to the docks, where he plans to sell the diamond and flee. Poirot paused, letting the revelation settle, but Hercule Poirot does not allow such injustice. I have alerted the authorities, and Ellaby was apprehended last night with the diamond in his possession. Lady Eleanor is safe, found in a warehouse, shaken but alive. She will return to Ashborne Manor, and the curse of the Star of Kimberley is broken. Clara sobbed with relief. Hawkins exhaled, and Gerald slumped, his anger spent. Thorne buried his face in his hands, while Harper scribbled furiously. Poirot raised a hand. The clues were clear. The letter pointed to Ellaby's greed, the diary to Eleanor's plan, the locket to Langley's betrayal, and the chapel's struggle to the abduction. Your secrets, Gerald's debts, Thorne's duplicity, Harper's prying clouded the truth, but Poirot sees through all. He stepped forward, his voice softening. Human nature is complex, n'est-ce pas? Greed, fear, love, they drive us to folly. But justice prevails, and Eleanor Ashbourne is restored. As the group dispersed, Clara lingered, whispering, "Thank you, sir," for her. Poirot nodded, his heart warmed by her loyalty. He stepped outside, the dawn painting the hills gold. The manor, freed of its shadows, seemed to breathe again. Poirot adjusted his hat, reflecting on the case. The diamond's curse was no myth. It was the darkness of the human soul, laid bare by his little grey cells. He walked to the waiting car. His work done, the truth revealed. Ashbourne Manor would heal, and Poirot, ever the guardian of order, moved on to the next puzzle, his legacy undimmed.